Kathleen Hassler, a board member and chair of the program committee with HAIDA, the Hawaii branch of the International Dyslexia Association. HAIDA is proud to host and bring you tonight's event, Writing Strategies to Help Students with Dyslexia Succeed. We are very pleased you're joining us for this opportunity, and we are grateful to Dr. Amber Ray, our presenter, for sharing her knowledge and expertise to empower learners who struggle with reading and writing skills. Before I formally introduce Dr. Ray, I'd like to take a moment to thank all of our members, donors, and sponsors for their support in bringing events like this free webinar to our community. Your support allows us to help increase awareness of dyslexia, provide support for individuals with dyslexia to their families and educators, promote training, and improve literacy for struggling learners. I'd like to especially thank Margaret Higa, HAIDA's Executive Director, and Dr. Kavita Rao, a fellow HAIDA board member and professor in the College of Education, University of Hawaii at Manoa. We appreciate her expertise and help with this evening's webinar. Some of the additional logistics Dr. Kavita has already pointed out, but just to reiterate, if you are just joining us this evening, your audio and video has been turned off, and we kindly ask everyone keep their audio and video off throughout the presentation so that we may provide a clear webinar experience. You can put your questions in the chat box where Margaret Higa or Dr. Rao will monitor and Dr. Amber Ray will periodically respond. It is now my honor to introduce Dr. Amber Ray, who is an assistant professor and coordinator of the Literacy Specialist Program at the University of Hawaii at Manoa in the Department of Special Education, College of Education. She earned her PhD in Learning, Literacies, and Technologies, specializing in special education at Arizona State University. She has experience teaching students with learning disabilities, autism, intellectual disabilities, and emotional and behavioral disorders. Her research interests focus on writing and reading interventions to help students with disabilities succeed in school. She is interested in strategy and self-regulation approaches to instruction for students who struggle with learning. Amber aims to use her knowledge gained through research to help current educators and to prepare future teachers to use effective instructional techniques when teaching struggling learners and students with learning differences. It's now my pleasure to turn it over to Dr. Amber Ray.
Thank you very much. All right, welcome everybody. I'm excited to be here tonight and to be talking about ways we can help students with dyslexia improve their writing abilities. All right, so the goals of this webinar really are to address, I'm going to talk about self-regulated strategy development for writing instruction, talk about some writing strategies that can be used for informative, argumentative, and narrative writing, and ways to help students self-regulate the writing process. The students with dyslexia tend to have difficulties with writing, and they tend to manifest themselves in one of 5 ways. Often, students really struggle with spelling or handwriting. They can also have a limited or lack of diverse vocabulary. And they also struggle with idea development and organization of papers. Often, when students with dyslexia have trouble with writing, the intervention or instruction is really focused on that handwriting and spelling piece. However, tonight I'm really going to focus on how do we help students with that idea development and organization of their writing to improve the quality and content of what they're writing. So one way to help students with dyslexia improve their writing is to use self-regulated strategy development. And SRSD has been examined in over 100 studies and was deemed an evidence-based practice. It's been used across the board, anywhere from kindergarten up through used in high school, college age, and adults. to really help the students improve their writing abilities. And there's a variety of different strategies and instruction that can be used to help students improve their writing, but overall strategy, instruction, and SRSD in particular have the strongest impact in improving students' writing abilities when we're really looking at that content and organization. So I just wanted I like to show sample student work to begin with to show you the type of improvements that students typically get when using SRSD as the instruction. So first, in all the examples I'm sharing are students who receive special education services for a reading or writing disability, typically specified as dyslexia. So first grade, here's an example of a student, what they wrote in response to how do you be a fit kid. They just responded with one sentence. And then after receiving this instruction, the first grader was able to craft a 5-sentence paragraph. Really shows their development in terms of providing a topic sentence, having some details and information, and a conclusion, which is a big improvement from just that one sentence in first grade. Another sample is a 5th grader, and this is really common. We'll see students as you get into upper elementary and middle school really being unsure and hesitant to write, so then they tend to write very minimal or next to nothing. But they have lots of really great ideas. They know lots of information. It's just trying to get that information onto the paper. And so then after receiving SRSD instruction, this 5th grader was able to create several paragraphs and really organize their thoughts. Final example I want to show you is a 10th grade student. And this 10th grader just put in their plans, made a few notes, and they wrote just one large paragraph. And I know it's hard to see, but just kind of the concept, they wrote one paragraph, and then afterwards they wrote more detailed notes, and then they created a 5-paragraph essay. So again, some large gains. So how did I get those gains? How did I help students improve their writing? What did that look like? That instruction included 3 key tenets, and those are all part of self-regulated strategy development. And SRSD includes typically a genre-specific strategy, self-regulation components, and 6 stages of instruction. I'm going to go through each of those integral components with each piece to see how they work together and how they contribute to the instruction. So first is genre-specific strategy. To help students organize their ideas, to come up with ideas, they need a strategy based on the genre they're being expected to write in. So the Common Core state standards, right, and our Hawai'i state standards expect students to be able to write an opinion essay, and a narrative essay. Those are the 3 main genres of writing. They're also what's assessed, typically assessed within the Smarter Balanced exams, and what students need to do within the classroom. So here are some example strategies that have been used with students for each of those genres. So informative, we have a strategy of POW plus TIDE, where each letter, right, our strategy is a mnemonic. So each letter stands for something, with POW being pulling apart the prompt, O organizing their notes, and W writing more. And TIDE standing for this specific genre, so informative writing, the key elements that need to be included within an informative essay. For opinion, we have the tree strategy, and that outlines what do students need to include within an opinion essay. And this one's a little smaller to see, but narrative writing, it's called the WWW what to, how to strategy, and reminding students of what needs to go in when they write a narrative or a story. And this is really important, this instruction, just helping students know and to differentiate that based on the genre they're being asked to write in, they need to be using a different strategy, and different elements or components of an essay need to be included. So more specifically, SRSD typically teaches students a general writing process strategy. Okay, no matter what you're going to write, first you need to pull apart the prompt. And that's really saying, what is this prompt asking me to do? What do I need to actually write here, right? So they have to be able to read the prompt and interpret, what am I supposed to do? And specifically looking at the prompt to identify, is this an informative, opinion, or narrative essay that I need to write? Then O is organize their notes. So they need to, okay, if we identified that's an informative essay, I know I need to use the TIDE strategy to help me organize my notes. And then W is write and say more. So you take your notes, and based on those notes, which notes I teach should be short, quick, be like caveman talk or like a text message, and then you write and say more. You take your notes and you write out all your thoughts and ideas in paragraph form. So here's an example, more detailed, of what an informative writing strategy would look like. The TIDE strategy is a common strategy used for informative writing. And for younger students, the version is T for a topic, right? They need a topic sentence. ID stands for important details. And we typically teach, they should have 3 important details, right? An informative essay, the goal is to teach someone about a topic. So if you're going to teach someone, you want to give them a couple facts. And I typically say 3 important details is going to be helpful to teach someone about a topic. And then E and ending to wrap it up. This TIDE strategy continues to be used as you move into the upper grades, but just becomes a little more sophisticated, right? As we expect their writing to become more sophisticated as well. So again, T, a topic, but in this case, maybe not a topic sentence, but a topic paragraph, right? That hooks the reader, introduces your topic, and has some sort of thesis statement. You want important evidence and details to support that evidence, right? And that usually takes a couple paragraphs and then an ending to wrap up the essay. So those are the genre-specific strategies. All right, so you have these strategies, but if you just give and say, here, look here's POW plus TIDE. Now you'll be able to write a great informative essay. Well, that's not the case, and that's especially not the case, for our students who struggle with writing. We need to help explicitly teach them how to effectively use those strategies and when to use them. So this is where it comes into play, the 6 stages of SRSD instruction. The first stage of the 6 stages are very flexible, interactive, very recursive. By recursive, I mean if you get to a point and you realize, okay, a student is still struggling, I need to go back up. That makes perfect sense, right? And so you don't have to follow them in complete order. You can go back and work through these stages based on how students are learning and developing. So we have develop background knowledge, discuss the strategy, model the strategy, memorize the strategy, support the strategy, and implement the strategy. And so when I'm saying strategy, I'm really referring to that POW plus TIDE, right, for informative, or POW plus tree, or POW plus the WWW. There are lots of other strategies, just giving you some examples and ones that are commonly used when first introducing the 3 main genres. All right, so the first stage of SRSD instruction is develop and activate background knowledge. And this is where you're talking with the students about the genre. You're introducing informative writing. What does it mean to inform? What's your goal when you're writing an informative essay? Are you trying to teach the reader about something? Then you also read example works within this genre. So I typically have students brainstorm, any informative writing before, okay? A newspaper, a textbook, right? Anything that has facts and details. And then also have the students read examples of informative writing that's at their writing level. And so that's really important because often we provide students with examples of informative writing like their textbook. Say, look, this textbook, this is informative writing, but that's not a level that we could expect our students to write at, right? So often it's providing them with samples I've written of what I would expect that they could write, or taking examples from previous students' work, and really reading and examining writing within that genre. I also then, at this point, discuss and explore the writing and self-regulation strategies. So if we're focused on informative writing, going to introduce POW plus TIDE, talk about all those pieces, and then also talk about the self-regulation strategies. And I'm going to come to that next, the pieces of self-regulation. But in general, the self-regulation strategies include goal setting, self-instructions, self-evaluation of their work, and self-reinforcement and celebrating their successes. Then within this first stage, we're also just teaching the mnemonics, talking about the steps of the writing process. So that POW strategy, what are the steps? Anytime we're gonna write, what do we need to do? And not just having them memorize that P is for pull apart the prompt, right? But what does that mean? What do I mean pull apart the prompt? What does that look like? How do we do that? And then looking at the required elements for each specific genre. Right? So if we're doing informative, we need to have important details and talking about the difference between a fact and an opinion, right? And that in informative, we're not providing what we believe or what we think is best, but we're trying to provide facts and important details. Stage 2 of SRC instruction is discussing the strategy and really going more in depth now. Stage 1 is kind of providing this overview and understanding of the writing process and the genre. And stage 2 is working towards understanding the strategy and really understanding what it looks like to do each of those steps. This stage typically begins by discussing students' current writing and self-regulation abilities, their attitudes, and their beliefs about writing. Often I ask students, all right, so when you get a writing assignment, how do you feel? If they're in kindergarten, first, second grade, they're usually still excited and optimistic about writing. The older they get, even third grade and beyond, the students who are struggling, students with dyslexia, really tell me, oh, I really don't want to do this. I don't like writing. I can't do it. It's hard, right? Lots of kind of these negative comments. So we start right away by talking about that, putting that out on the table, saying, okay, yes, writing can be hard, but that's why we're going to learn these new strategies to try and help you make writing easier and help you feel more successful with writing. And trying to really work a bit on those attitudes and beliefs about their own personal writing and show them that they can succeed.
Amber, I'm just going to jump in with a question. It's not a question that anyone asked, it's my own question, and just kind of to emphasize that I believe you can teach these in inclusive classroom, right? So if we have any gen ed teachers out there in today's audience, I just kind of wanted to have you say a little bit about how a teacher can do this with all students. Absolutely.
Okay, great, thank you. So definitely these strategies can be used and are can be taught small group, but often it's taught whole group, large classroom. I'm working with a school right now in Hawaii, and the whole school has adopted using SRSD as their writing instruction format across the board. It's a K-5 elementary school, but all classrooms, inclusive classrooms, also supporting their students who are English language learners. So this can be done, with a large class. Did that give you your question?
Yes, absolutely. I just kind of wanted to emphasize that this is for all students, and it also helps the students who have dyslexia and learning disabilities as you're working with everybody. So thank you.
Yeah. Yep. All right. Also during this stage, really emphasizing the role of effort and using the learning strategies to become a better writer. That just because you have this strategy, if you don't use it and try hard, you're not going to become a better writer. You have to really put in that effort. And acknowledging, yeah, writing can be challenging, but if we put in the effort, they'll get better. Also introduce at this point a graphic organizer for the specific writing genre to help them organize and plan their thoughts before writing. And then this part, we have students analyze good, grade appropriate model papers. So I provide students with an essay another student wrote or one that I wrote for their example, and have them look at it, read that paper and see, okay, if this is an informative essay, did they have a topic? Can I identify that topic? Right, where are their important details? And really then trying to establish students' commitment to learning these strategies and collaborating and working together to improve. So I want to show you here some examples of the graphic organizer. This is often one used in early elementary, especially kindergarten, first grade, a spot to draw some pictures to go with each important detail. Here's an upper elementary outline. And again, just reminding them of the POW plus tide. This is informative writing. Topic sentence, 3 important details and an ending. And then a secondary example for a graphic organizer. Again, topic, important evidence and details 3 times, and an ending. So here's an example of what it looks like in a classroom to analyze an exemplar essay. So provide the prompt for the students, and as a class together, you look at that prompt, figure out what is that prompt asking us to do. This prompt in this case was asking the student, it says, describe how animals help each other. Okay, so we're trying to describe, that's a keyword telling me it's an informative essay. And then it's hard to see, but they read this, so this essay was already written for the students and put on the board. And they read it together and said, okay, can we find, is there a topic? What's hard to see is that it's underlined in green. So they underlined the topic in green. And then they said, okay, is there 3 important details? And each important detail was underlined in yellow. And then the ending, they underlined in red. And so often for younger students, it can be really helpful to highlight, right? If we're trying to find a topic, okay, identify that sentence and highlight it. And that color coding can really show them where those specific pieces are. That can be really helpful also in evaluating their own work. Instead of just checking off, yep, I have a topic, I have these 3, but having to highlight the actual sentences where that's written to make it very concrete. I also like to use the green, yellow, red as a stoplight, right? The topic sentence is green, that's where you start your paper. Yellow for the important details, and the ending is red. Stop, you're done writing. During stage 2, so the students, we read the prompt as a class, read this sample, identify the pieces, and then the teacher just shows how could you how could you make notes, right? And this is really working backwards, right? Because typically we read the prompt, organize notes, and then write. So I say, okay, we're gonna be detectives. We have this student last year had the prompt and they wrote this essay, but I can't find their planning sheet. Can you help me recreate what would their planning sheet maybe have looked like to help them write this essay? Also in this stage, often have students go through and examine a poor example. So after you have students examine 1 or 2, sometimes 3 good examples, they often then just go, okay, first sentence is the topic. Next one's important, right? And just go each sentence by sentence. But that's not always the case, and especially when they start looking at their own writing, you need to be able to critically think and look at each sentence, and is it a topic sentence? If it is it addressing the topic? To have students analyze some poorer essays and show them, okay, highlight and identify the parts that are there, say, okay, what's missing? How could we improve it? And have them make notes to improve the essay. In this case, this one only had 2 important details, so it needed to be improved to add a 3rd important detail. Stage 3 of SRSD instruction is modeling the strategy, and this really is a think aloud, right? And we do the think alouds all the time when reading, but the same needs to occur in the writing process. So this begins by the teacher having a prompt and in front of the whole class, pulling apart the prompt, figuring out what needs to be done, then organizing the notes, right? And the teacher makes the notes on the board and writes them all out. And then the teacher going through and writing the whole essay. And while doing that, the teacher thinks aloud and shares what they're doing and says, okay, so I know I need to write an informative essay about the importance of libraries. Okay, how am I going to begin? Oh, I can use the TIDE strategy. I need to make or use my graphic organizer for that, right? And they talk aloud and use this think aloud process to help students make the writing process visible, right? And the teacher shares, what are good writers thinking in their head while they're going through this whole process? After modeling this writing process, while doing the writing process, the teacher also models self-regulation. And this is a really good time for a teacher to be writing and practicing this and going, oh, all right, my hand is just getting so tired. I don't know if I can keep writing, right? And then saying, nope, it's okay. I can take a 10-second break, shake my hands out, I can do it, I can keep going, right? We're talking themselves through some of those roadblocks and things that come along, whether it's handwriting fatigue or not being able to think of a good idea, but instead modeling and thinking out loud, how do you work through that process? Also during this stage, they analyze and discuss strategies and make changes. So this is really asking the students to, after the teacher is modeled, saying, okay, how did that go? What did you see the teacher do that you thought would be helpful? What would you do when it's your turn? What would you put differently in that paper if you were the one writing it? And this is the time where you really help students develop their own self-statements that they could say, things they can say to themselves during the writing process to help them succeed and help them get through those roadblocks. After completing the essay, the teacher also models self-assessment. So going back through and showing them, okay, once you finish the essay, you just don't say, all right, I wrote it all, I'm done, I can just be finished and turn it in. But no, actually we should go back, we need to reread our own work and find and assess their own writing. And assess their writing by finding, do I have all those genre elements, such as the topic, sentence, important details? Okay. Did I include linking words? Do I have a capital letter and punctuation? And through this strategy, or through this modeling, really trying to promote student development of that self-regulation of the strategies. So here's an example, right, when a teacher was pulling apart the prompt, right? The teacher went through and circled key words, wrote a few notes, and reminded themselves, okay, we need to use POW. First thing, I need to pull apart this prompt, right? And so modeling, not only talking aloud, but the physical motions of circling or underlining, and then moving on to writing. Here's an example of modeling making notes. So the teacher goes through, pulls apart the prompt, makes the notes, writes everything fully out, emphasizes that notes are just not complete sentences, just like a text message or caveman talk. Stage 4 of SRC is memorizing the strategy. And this really began at stage 1 because you're constantly reviewing the strategy. And if you're doing informative, you're constantly reviewing POW plus TIDE. What do those mean? When do we use them? What step is next? But it's important to have students try and remember those mnemonics because they're not always going to have that great poster in the classroom. They might lose their handout, right? That's definitely a possibility from home to school. Okay, where's my graphic organizer? But teaching them, okay, it's okay if you don't have your graphic organizer. You can create your own version of TIDE. You just need to remember what each step stands for. They also, can't bring any notes or handouts when they take the Smart or Balanced or the ACT or any kind of standardized test. And students will tell you, when I ask students, okay, why do you think I want you to memorize what POW stands for? They know, oh, so then I can use it in, right? And that promotes a good discussion of generalization too. Okay, well, if you have to write an assignment in social studies, could you use POW? And then, oh yeah, right? And talking about what strategies would be appropriate, when could you use them, right? And often they have to be explicitly told, like, yeah, in your other classes, that's great. You should use these strategies. When I ask them to begin with, they usually tell me, I say, can you use, if you have to write an informative paragraph in science, could you use TIDE? I said, no. Yes, yes, please use it in all your other classes. but that explicit statement of, yes, these strategies work in all your classes. So another important reason to try and memorize those mnemonic strategies. Stage 5 is supportive. So this often is collaborative writing and use of the self-regulation strategies. So the teacher modeled the whole writing process, then as a class going through and collaboratively writing a piece together, pulling apart the prompt, as a class organizing your notes, and then as a class writing essay, right? Pulling ideas, getting ideas from students and encouraging people to contribute. After doing that once, then I typically have students work in pairs or small groups and do some intentional groupings with students to work together and use another prompt to write together. There's still a handful of students who are really struggling. I have the rest of the class partner up and write the essay, and I take 3 to 5 students in the back with me, and we do that essay again all together, really depending on the support they're needing. And so practicing and collaboratively writing until students are getting the hang of it, are feeling more confident, and having that second person to work with can really help support each other in the writing process. This is a time to establish goals, often starting to reduce the amount of prompting from the teacher by saying, what's next? And reducing the guidance and collaboration. Because the eventual goal is, right, can we use this on their own? And students should be really being able to use their strategies and self-regulation, working towards independence at this stage. So here's an example, right, as a class, working together and collaboratively writing. And I've seen teachers often do this in a variety of ways. They have everybody collaboratively help, and the teacher is the scribe and writes it all on the board. And then as they move on, the students take over the handwriting piece. Sometimes they like to have, if we're collaboratively writing, everybody makes the notes and just the teacher writes the full essay. Lots of different options there, and based on what your students need to stay engaged within that writing lesson. And also working on some scaffolding within this stage. So often we provide the students with a graphic organizer to begin with, and then slowly transitioning and saying, all right, I'm not going to always have these graphic organizers. You're using it in a different subject or on a test. So practicing how do you create and write and make this graphic organizer on your own. And the SRSD strategies are all set up so that the graphic organizers can be drawn as a T-chart. So it's pretty easy to be able to create the graphic organizer on their own. They just have to remember the strategy. This strategy example is a strategy specific for the ACT writing exam. And then stage 6 is independent practice, right? And the goal being that students are able to write and using the writing and self-regulation strategies on their own, right? And this doesn't mean that, okay, that they start writing on their own and you realize, oh, they could use a little help really developing maybe their opinion more. Or if they're writing a narrative and you're realizing, okay, you know, they have the characters, but we're really not seeing in there what the characters are feeling, or there's not a strong plot line, right? That doesn't mean you can't go back and remodel and work together to help improve their writing. But, you know, the goal always being working towards that independence and being able to use those strategies on their own. So put in some more examples of independent writing. So here's a 3rd grader who used the TIDE strategy. And then this 3rd grader, the goal was working on paragraphing. So this student on their pretest just had one paragraph, and they're still working on the concept of paragraphing, but really they're added a lot of content. And then here's another example. This is a student, 10th grader, see some notes for pulling apart the prompt. This is just loose leaf paper that they made their own notes on. Didn't have a graphic organizer, they made their own notes. And then wrote multiple pages for their essay. And just showing again the idea of organizing their notes and using these notes to create their paragraphs and essay. All right, the last portion of SRSD is self-regulation. And self-regulation includes self-instruction, self-evaluation, self-reinforcement, and goal setting. And these pieces are really built in there to help students be able to work through the writing process on their own and help them to know what to do if they get stuck, and to be able to really evaluate and assess their own work. So the first piece is self-instruction. And I work through with students, have them come up with statements they can say to themselves to help them when they're writing. And these are things, we practice and I talk about them out loud, but I say, these are things you say in your head when you're working on a writing task. What are some things you could say to yourself to think of good ideas, right? And so often, here are the comments the student wrote is about going back to the sources or rereading sources. This is a note sheet for informative writing, right? So if you're supposed to be writing and providing people with, or writing and including facts and details, you might have to go back to a piece of source material, right? Your textbook or an article you had to read, and that will help you get some ideas of important details and facts. Have them come up with things to tell them while they're working. These are usually keep it up, do your best, you can do it. And then to double check their work, reminding them. So this student said, use POW plus TIDE. Double check to make sure there are the 5 parts of TIDE. So in this case, it had been younger elementary. So a topic, sentence, 3 important details, and an ending. That would have been their 5 parts. But this is a good place where you can have self-statements that work for the whole class, and that's start the brainstorming, and then things that are specific to the student. So a student who sees a writing assignment and tries to go as fast as they possibly can because they just want to get it done. A good self-statement for while I work could be, I can take my time while writing, right? But the self-statement, I can take my time while writing, is probably not good for the student who works very slowly and laboriously when writing, right? So trying to make and personalize those self-statements based on their writing and what they mean. Here's an example of a classroom bulletin board, and each surfboard belongs to one student. So you can see this was done whole class. And so these surfboards were for the TIDE strategy. So again, going with the TIDE and the surfboard, and it has all their self-statements on it. And so posting them for a class, they got to pick just 1 or 2 self-statements that they thought were most important for them. But it can be really great to post those and have them in the classroom for others to look at and to see, and you could read someone else's and think, oh, that would be really good for me. I could use that self-statement. Also, within each of these, there's goal setting and self-evaluation. So here's an example that I've used for TIDE. TIDE, I use surfboards. Tree, the graph is in the shape of a coconut tree. And the WWW strategy for narrative or story writing, we use rockets, imagination and writing for a story. So these, the picture ones are typically used in elementary. It's really, though, just a bar graph, right? So do you have all the different parts? And this would be TIDE, using it. Do you have a topic? Do you have 3 important detail or important pieces of evidence, 3 additional details, and an ending? So that's one section for each element. And then we usually have students color in or draw fish based on personalized goals. And that might be a personalized goal of using transition words to introduce a new important detail, or a goal of I can capitalize the first word of every sentence, and then getting to color that in. Celebrate, they get to color in all the waves if they have all of their parts. If they were able to color their full surfboard, they could color in the waves. And this is where they write their goals. So the class goal is typically about it related to the genre. So in this case, I can use or include all 8 parts of TIDE in my essay. And then my goal might be something specific to them. Transition words, capitalization, punctuation. Having students set these goals and then being able to track their progress is really beneficial and helps them see how they're doing. It also encourages them to want to make sure, they include all the pieces. Often I've had students self-assess. They only have maybe 7 out of the 8. They say, I only have 7. Could I go back and edit and make it so I can get 8? Yes, right? Like that's our goal. We're really wanting students, right? If you catch that error and you want to edit your work and add to it, absolutely. But it was through the visual of the graph that they became apparent to them. Here's an example of a student's graph, or what a completed graph would look like. So here's a student's pre-test. I always graph, even when we model the essay that I model in the collaborative writing whole class. We graph it together, helps give them kind of that feel good, like, look, we're doing great. Often there's a little dip once I have them break off into partners or small groups, right? And go just graphing and seeing their progress as they go through it. And here's a written out class goal. I can write an informative essay with 8 parts of tide. I can use transition words to signal a new piece of important evidence. So in this case, the little fish, they got to draw a little fish for each transition word. For middle school and high school, I tend to use just a regular bar graph, right? And have a dark goal line where the goal is, how many elements, and then a separate graph for personalized goals, whether transition words, vocabulary words, these pieces. And then here I just want to show an example of self-evaluation. So here in the margin, the student reread their own work and labeled each of the parts of the strategy that they used. And then you can see some edits. They went back and added their linking or transition words. So I've done and used SRSD with students ages kindergarten all the way. I've done it in high school, and most recently I've also worked with college-age students using SRSD, and really effective and very helpful. I always ask students afterwards their thoughts, their feelings, what did they think about it? So here's some of my favorite quotes. One student said, with the strategies, writing an essay is not the end of the world. All right, that's good. We don't want writing assignments in school to feel like the end of the world. We want to give them the strategies and tools they need to feel like they can succeed and to do well. Right? And often they just didn't know those tools or hadn't been modeled and been explicitly taught how to incorporate and use those tools in their writing. The other quote I have, it was fun. Now, seems like a very simple quote, but this is from a 10th grade boy diagnosed with dyslexia and dysgraphia. And after working with his class and doing writing instruction, right, every time I was there was we're writing. And for him at the end to say, it was fun. He really felt like this was able to help him make writing fun for him. I thought was a big accomplishment to hear from a 10th grade male student. So I thought that was a good thought to share. So overall, right, teachers and students really report and appear more confident with their writing instruction, and especially knowing where to begin with writing when they use SRSD. So teachers, when using SRSD, really helps them to know how to help and work through the writing process and give their students the writing strategies and tools they need to tackle and be able to write within each genre, and help students have that self-regulation component to help them succeed and be able to work through the writing process and work through any roadblocks that they encounter. So it's very helpful for teachers with the set steps of instruction and strategies to use, and students really report feeling very confident with their writing after being taught and using SRSD. So now, go ahead and see if there's any questions or thoughts, comments about SRSD writing instruction or writing in general.
Hi, there are no questions in the chat box. We have a quiet and engaged group. But if any of you who are out there would like to ask a question now, I know Amber's given us a lot of really good information. Feel free to unmute your microphone. I think you all can. If you cannot unmute your microphone, you can also write your question in the chat box. So please do ask some questions while we have Dr. Ray here to answer.
Okay, great question. My next slide. Fabulous. Thank you, Christy. So some resources. Here are some common SRSD resources. And again, you have access to these slides, so then you can just click on these links, which is much easier. There's some IRIS modules. There's 2 of them out there that really, and those are really aimed at teachers on how to help and teach using SRSD. There are 2 books that I usually recommend. There's a picture of the one right up here, The Powerful Writing Strategies. These you can find on Amazon, like $30, but they're really, they're teacher friendly, and these 2 books are, most of the chapters are just lesson plans and filled with reproducibles. It says right on there, permission to copy and use in your classroom. So I typically recommend those 2 books to teachers. And then there's a couple websites, Think SRSD and the SRSD Online YouTube channel. Also, my last slide, when I switch to that, has my email address. And you can email me, and I'd be happy to share more documents and resources with you based on your specific grade level and those students you're working with, and help you in any way that way with materials. Thank you. Yeah, great. You led nicely into my next slide. Any other questions?
Amber, maybe you could give an idea of approximately the timeline that it would take to deliver this, the specifics of this strategy, if it's something you would recommend to start at the beginning of the school year, or something that you could implement mid-year, or as some of our educators might be thinking of how to utilize some of this information literally tomorrow.
Yeah.
Where would you guide them in that particular direction?
Sure. So I usually recommend identifying a genre that you want to work on, and identifying, okay, I know I need to help my students work on opinion writing, and so that you can start there and introducing the strategies for, in that case, POW plus tree, and the lessons, and going through a lesson sequence for opinion writing. With that, it typically, it really varies based on how much extra support and scaffolding the students need. You can range, often the writing instruction is done 2 to 3 times a week, or maybe about 30 minutes each session, and typically around 8 weeks or so is a typical kind of timeline. Also, it depends, like, are you working with a small group or a whole class, right? Whole class a little longer, depending on the number of students you have and getting through all those pieces. When I work, one of the schools that I work with, SRSD year-round, they do informative for quarter 1, opinion quarter 2, narrative quarter 3, and quarter 4 is reviewing all the genres and trying to generalize them into the content areas. So there's a lot of options and kind of variety of time lengths that might be implemented. Let's see.
Min has a question in the chat box.
Yes. Okay. See, so Min asked about often there's strategies that hand motions that can go along with this. Right. So teachers have been really creative and come up with so getting students to memorize, like POW plus tree. The mnemonic itself is helpful to memorize. That P is for pull apart the prompt. The teachers have come up with a lot of hand motions. So I'll model POW, and then you could YouTube and see other teachers. But often P for POW is to pull apart the prompt. Students, then you see the teacher say, okay, class P, and they'll go, pull apart the prompt, right? Oh, organize my notes, and usually showing them, okay, put things in order. And then W, write and say more. Another way to really help students just engage, add some movement into it, stand up, let's practice, go show the movements to a partner. Other ways to really kind of help enhance that memorization. Yeah, thanks.
And that's great. So there's more on YouTube with that, Amber?
I've seen plenty of varieties on YouTube in terms of what teachers, I've seen even some teachers do a song. They like try and remember the parts of tree. So if you, I can't think of off the top of my head the specific links, but yeah, they're
Okay, great. I can't wait to hear the SRSD song.
All right, so then I just wanted to move to my last slide. Here's my contact information, Amber Ray at hawaii.edu. So if you'd like more information, you have questions, want to know more, please feel free to email me and I'd be happy to help you with some resources. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ray, for this presentation. It was really fantastic. We appreciate your presentation, your thorough presentation about the complex process of writing that requires so many skills. We're super excited for this new evidence-based information on self-regulated strategy development for improving the writing of students with dyslexia and learning differences. I especially like your mind-body connection, the kinesthetic approach, and I really appreciated your self-statements. That's really an excellent point. I appreciate you highlighting that piece. Additional thanks definitely go out to our program committee members, Dr. Kavita Rao, Elizabeth Scamahorn, Kimball McCann, and Margaret Higa, our executive director. Thank you so much, all of you, for your support in tonight's webinar. Before we close this evening, we'd like to just bring your attention to some free community events that are coming up on behalf of HIDA. April 22nd, we have the college transitions for students with learning differences. On April 30th, we have Dyslexia 101 and tips for struggling readers. For more information on these events and logistics, you can please visit our website. Finally, I want to also bring your attention to our annual fundraiser that is this month, and it is held Friday, April 26th from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. on Oahu at the Royal Hawaiian Golf Club in Kailua, same location as last year. And we invite all of you, as well as please asking you to share this information with family and friends who would be interested in a fun-filled evening with live Hawaiian entertainment, dinner, a silent auction, and prizes. All the proceeds of this evening do benefit our community through programming such as this webinar and other upcoming free presentations. Again, please visit HIDA's website for more information, either to donate or buy tickets for our fundraiser and to register for upcoming events. Now, participants, if you could please see the link to complete a brief evaluation survey for this webinar with 8 questions. We do appreciate your feedback. It is helpful as we develop and plan future webinars and workshops. Lastly, we invite you to follow us on Facebook and to continue to visit our website regularly to learn more about events. We'll leave this link up for a few more moments for those of you who may want to finish it up this evening. And a general final closing and thanks on behalf of HIDA and the program committee. We sincerely thank Dr. Amber Ray for sharing her expertise, Margaret, Kavita, and all the participants for your time and commitment to helping struggling readers and writers, and those who teach and parent them. Mahalo. Thank you very much and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you, Kathy, for all the work you did to put this together.
Oh, I don't do it alone.